Welcome to this podcast produced for Business Lincolnshire as part of the Fit for Business programme. I am Guy Lewis and we're joined today by Deborah Goodall from Air 8 Marketing. Hi Deborah, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Guy. Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. So what business hurdle have you been mulling over this week?
Well, this last week I have been thinking about different business legal structures and which ones may best suit your needs.
Are there different types of business legal structures?
Yeah, there's lots of options to consider, and quite often it depends on the type of business that you're in. So some are sort of natural or easy decisions to make. So a one-man band might sort of naturally gravitate towards being a sole trader, whereas an engineering business might more naturally choose to be a limited company. So there are things that influence that decision. You have to sort of have at the back of your mind that once you've made your decision, you're not stuck with it though. So you can sort of move from one to the other with a little bit of paperwork.
Okay, so what are the options?
Well, the main choices are to be a sole trader, so which is also often called being self-employed, being a business partnership, or a limited company, and then you might also consider social enterprise, depending on the type of business that you're in. But I think we're going to cover that later on.
So when you say depending, so what's likely to dictate which one of these you choose?
Well, yeah, so choice is often made based on the amount of paperwork that you need to fill in, if I'm honest, to get started. Or you might be influenced by the amount of taxes that you'll need to pay, or how you can take profit out of the business, or what you have to do if you make a loss. I think personally that it's a really good idea to speak with an accountant when making a decision about what sort of business type you want to set up, because they will give you the up-to-date advice and be able to help you understand actually what the impact is of taking profit out of your business, or whether you are a business that is likely to make a loss. You might be a business that is projecting to make a loss for the first 3 years, or they might just talk you through the different tax options that you've got.
Okay. So where do we start?
Well, so with our conversation, I think we should just start straight away with sole traders, because this is where most businesses start. So most people sort of refer to themselves as being self-employed. Technically, that refers to the way that you work rather than the business structure that you have. So the business structure would be sole trader. So that means that you are the sole owner of the business, and often, but not always, the sole person in the business. So you can have staff as a sole trader, you can employ people, but quite often you find that sole traders is sort of a one-person business. The key thing with being a sole trader is that there's no differentiation between you as an individual and the business itself. So quite often sole traders are smaller businesses, such as sort of freelance writers or hairdressers or plumbers, or I was a sole trader for a number of years as a marketing consultant, and so you all sort of work for yourself. But in terms of business entity, there's no differentiation between you as the individual and you as the business.
Okay, so are there any sort of taxation points for sole traders?
Yeah, as a sort of sole trader, self-employed person, you'll need to notify HMRC within 3 months of setting up, so that they can then know that you've gone self-employed, and then you'll be responsible for completing a self-assessment tax return, and for paying your national insurance contributions, and for any income tax on what you make. So you can handle the self-assessment and calculation of your national insurance and taxes yourself, or you can pass it over to an accountant. My preference, always use an accountant. Also depending on the size of your business, you might need to register for VAT, but again, your accountant will advise you on that.
Okay. And what about things like the company debt and stuff? Is that different?
So this is what I was saying. There's no differentiation between you and sort of your business entity, if you like. So you're personally liable for any debts that you might run up as a sole trader. So that is quite important to consider, especially if you are a business that, potentially won't make money for a while or has a lot of investment to make up front, you're personally responsible for all of that debt.
Okay.
You could, as a sole trader, you could run a franchise as a sole trader. So you buy the name or assets to help you set up your business, and you buy sort of the recognition value of the name. So things like Action Coach and Burger King. And so the startup costs can be quite high. And then usually there's kind of a minimum income target with a percentage being paid to the franchisor monthly. But there's lots of information on franchising on the Business Franchise Association website. And so if you are considering going down that route, then, have a look at that website and really consider what the benefit is of being associated with the brand, and consider that against this percentage that has to be paid to them on a monthly basis.
Okay, because you're sort of buying a ready-made business, so to speak, aren't you? You
are in some cases. In other cases, you have to invest to actually then start and build your own customer base. So some of them aren't quite as ready-made as what you'd think they would be.
Okay, so somebody sole trader or someone being self-employed is probably the simplest to set up and close down. Be aware that the company debts are your own responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next structure to look at?
So the next one is a partnership. So, as it sort of suggests, when you go into business with one or more other people and you've got shared responsibility for that business, it's really important to have a partnership agreement so that everybody within that business knows how the profits are split, what happens if and when someone wants to get out of the business. It also provides a really clear structure within the business. And again, speak to an accountant or a commercial solicitor. They will help you formulate that agreement into a legal document so that you all know what's going on within that business.
Okay. And again, are there any taxation points for a business partnership?
Well, you've still got responsibility for your own self-assessment tax return, and you still pay your own tax and national insurance. But one of the partners within the partnership would have to submit a partnership self-assessment. So it's kind of, that partner would have to submit a partnership self-assessment and their personal self-assessment. So there is a bit more paperwork involved. And again, dependent on income, you might have to register for VAT. Just in terms of other things to consider, you're still personally responsible for debts between all of the partners under joint and several liability. And this is done on more of a what you can afford basis. So again, you probably want to detail that out in your partnership agreement at the start before you get into any situations where that may need to be called on.
Okay, just going a bit, just maybe think of something actually as you were talking. So that the sole trader or partnership, and there's very little difference between the entity, between the business. Would you advise, or would you advise to have separate bank accounts, or to have, is it advice as against compulsory? Is the good practice? I mean, I'm sure with a partnership, you'd want to try and keep things a little bit, separate, if that's
absolutely, yeah. And also that there is to bear in mind, whilst as a sole trader, I would always suggest that you have a separate bank account, have a business bank account. Quite a lot of grant schemes will not pay out to personal bank accounts. So if you're applying for any grants, or you may apply for any grants in the future, and lots of grants come out that businesses and sole traders or partnerships could apply for, you don't want to be rejected on the basis of just not having a business bank account. And typically they're asking for a proof of that bank account of being established for over sort of 12 months or something.
Okay.
So, but it does make life easier if you have separate bank accounts anyway.
And I guess a small cost. I mean, I'd have thought a business bank account is, tens of pounds a year to run or something of that.
Yeah, what are they? I don't know. I think most of them get 12 months free.
Yeah, okay.
So I think some of them operate on a free basis, free forever basis.
Okay.
Some of them are like £5 a month. It's not a massive amount of money, but in terms of your sort of accounting sanity, it'll be well worth it.
Okay, so business partnership very similar to sole trader, or being self-employed. Apart from it's a partnership agreement, there might be a bit more paperwork. You put your own accounts in, you put your partnership accounts in. The debt is still managed; it's still your debt, you and your partners or partners, and it can split on what they can afford. And that tip again there, that even as a sole trader or being self-employed, maybe split your finances, maybe make sure you've got something that is just the business account that just has. Because grants, etc., there may be certain things that require that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
My name is Guy Lewis, and you're with myself and Deborah Goodall discussing the different types of business legal structure. Having looked at sole traders, being self-employed and business partnerships, what's the next one to consider?
Limited companies. But there's two options here. Limited by shares or limited by guarantee.
Well, what's the difference?
So if it's a limited company that's limited by shares, then it's a company that makes a profit. And if it's a company that's limited by guarantee, then it's for organisations that are not for profit. So in both cases, the business or organisation is a separate entity to the individuals who run the business. It has, completely separate finances. However, those that are limited by shares have shares and shareholders, and they keep their profits. And those that are limited by guarantee has guarantors and a guaranteed amount, and the profits are invested back into the company.
Okay. Any examples of them?
Yeah, so I did have to try quite hard to find an example, if I'm honest. But then it occurred to me that places like golf clubs are quite often set up as limited by guarantee. So they're all about the members, and all the profits are invested back into the golf club or the grounds or whatever it might be.
Okay. I'm sort of thinking as you say that, you think, bowling clubs and rugby clubs.
Yeah,
it all feels the same sort of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily the big Premiership profit-making ones, but more the sort of local.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And are there any specific requirements when operating limited companies? There's certain things you have to do.
Yeah, so you have to set the business up with Companies House. You have to have a business bank account. So whereas it's optional with a sole trader or partnership, it's mandatory when it's a limited company.
Okay.
You have to use an accountant. And your limited company has to have shareholders, but you could just have one shareholder as yourself. And the limited company pays dividends to shareholders on profits.
Okay. So set up with Company House. I guess you've got things like business filing. So you have to file your accounts with Company's House. There may be something to do with the accountant preparing your accounts for audit purposes or some of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Interesting that a business bank account is mandatory, but
Yes.
actually you would say a business bank account is something you should do whatever you do.
Well, yeah, exactly. Keep your finances for your business separate from your personal. It makes life a lot easier, especially when it comes to filling out a self-assessment.
Okay. And we've always talked about, the debts of a business. So if you're a sole trader, you're responsible for the debts. Is that different when you've got a limited company?
Yeah, absolutely. So debts within a limited company are not personal debts and therefore do not need to be paid by the directors. So any debts is the responsibility of the company, and it's not passed down. There's no responsibility for each of the individual directors or the one director to pay any of the debts.
Which I suppose makes sense when you've got bigger companies with bigger liabilities and maybe more loans, etc., or the possibility of big bad debts.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so limited company for them. Brilliant. Okay, so limited company is a separate business entity. It's separate to the individual, and while it's a bit more complex, Company's House, but it's a bit of accountancy, that sort of stuff. Maybe a bit more expensive to run. It could have some tax benefits around that, around the payment of dividends, but probably the big bit is the debts belong to the business and not the individual. Yeah. Okay. So what's the last one we're discussing?
Social enterprises. So this is specifically for businesses trading for social and environmental purposes, and they must be reinvesting their profits back into the business or the local community. So they might have different sort of definitions under social enterprise. So there can be a limited company a charitable incorporated organisation, a CIO, a cooperative, a community interest company, which is the one that most people sort of recognise, that CIC or KIC. Or you could be a sole trader or business partnership and be a social enterprise. So it is all quite confusing. If you are interested in setting up a social enterprise, then it very much gets specific advice from your accountant about the qualifying criteria and actually how you manage that reinvestment and how you're going to demonstrate that reinvestment into your business or local community.
Yeah, I've come across the country. There's an organisation called Sector Support. So you find Sector Support. There's one in North East Lincolnshire. I think there might be one in Lincolnshire. And that idea, they advise a lot on that sort of social enterprise and making sure you are compliant with the requirements. So why would you set up a social enterprise?
It's really about a sort of being able to attract funding as much as anything, to be honest, and draw down funds from larger organisations. I'm thinking off the top of my head, maybe potentially the Arts Council would be supporting a social enterprise rather than providing large grants for a limited company. They would be supporting something that's on the ground, that's going to impact the community and actually reinvest into the local area. There's also taxation benefits for setting up a social enterprise.
Okay. Have I got any good examples of a social enterprise? I mean, I was thinking, for mine, I think around the arts, where you've got people doing things in the community, performance, mass participation events, that type of stuff. Maybe that I don't know.
No, I've had dealings with community interest companies previously that have actually been website developers, but they've worked only with people in the local community, and they've reinvested their profits into supporting education of children in local schools. So I don't think there's a specific category where you say, what are good examples of these. Lots of things can fit into being a social enterprise. Like you say, the obvious ones are sort of the performing arts, anything that's going to be really sort of demonstrating value in the local community. But it could be that you could be something else.
Okay.
Again, sort of refer to your accountant.
Okay. So social enterprise would be better if you're looking for public funded rather than a commercial enterprise, and not taking money out for profit, rather ploughing it back into that local community.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Guy.
You've been listening to a Business Lincolnshire podcast. Look out for the next episode. If you're listening on the Business Lincolnshire YouTube channel, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or subscribe down below. If you're on your favourite podcast platform, then remember to follow the show. More information at businesslincolnshire.com.